ready for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Who else could it be? Me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to Sunday Night Football Overtime. Ravens, Steelers, AFC North, family business at its finest. If these two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, that's family business. And boy, it's nothing like Steelers-Ravens. I tell you what, a lot of rivalries in the NFL. I don't know if one lives up to the hype consistently as much as Steelers-Ravens does. You know what you're getting. You know what you're signing up for when you get Steelers-Ravens. The game earlier this season was actually an anomaly because that was a high-scoring game. Still was close, but it was a high-scoring game. You know, Pickett gets injured. Steelers started off like gangbusters. You generally don't get 30-something to 20-something or, you know, high 20s with these two teams. It's usually just like what we got tonight, 16-13. You know, something along those lines, 19-16, 20-17, 23-20, something like that. But you know what you're getting. Physical, hard-hitting, nasty affair. The funny thing was tonight is that neither team could stop the run. Both teams had tremendous success on the ground against one another. But when it came time to buckle down, force a field goal, both teams were able to do that successfully for much of the night. Unfortunately for the Ravens, when they needed the stop the most, they gave up the only touchdown that they surrendered on the night. A great play off schedule by Kenny Pickett, which was one of the things that if you were scouting Kenny Pickett and you loved about him, it was his ability to create with athleticism off of the move and create off schedule. And you saw that on that play, and you've seen that throughout his rookie season. I was having a conversation with my buddy about a month and a half ago about Kenny Pickett, and he was asking my opinion on what I thought about him. And I said, I like Kenny Pickett. I think this kid's done a lot of good stuff this year. Got to cut down on the turnovers, which he has, and that was one of the big bugaboos. And generally speaking, when we talk about young players, that's going to be the thing that they struggle with the most is making that transition from college to the pro game, guys being faster, more complex defenses, having more things thrown at you. You have to adjust to that, and with that come growing pains and mistakes. But, you know, you can see if a guy gets it. You can see if a guy can play at this level, and I saw that in Kenny Pickett. And now that he's scaled back on the turnovers, it makes this Steelers team extremely dangerous. And it's amazing the difference a guy like T.J. Watt makes on the defensive side of football, because when he was out, they looked lifeless on defense. They didn't look like the team that they look like right now. Now that he's back in the lineup, they're dangerous. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you know what it is with the Steelers. You know what they're going to do. It's amazing, too. This whole day, you know, as Washington fans, we spent bitching, complaining about the coaching staff, wanting to fire everyone, talking about coaches. And, you know, Steelers fans never cease to amaze me, because there's so many Steelers fans that can't stand Mike Tomlin, think the guy doesn't know what he's doing, poor manager of the clock, and he's not a great game manager, goes for two at random times, things of that nature, and they get frustrated with him and they want him gone. And I'm saying to myself, all the guy does is win. If you don't want him, and I've said this multiple times when it comes to Mike Tomlin, if you don't want him, I'll take him, because who thought the Steelers, when they were 2-6, would be sitting here at 8-8 with a chance to make the playoffs if they win? And I honestly think that everything that they need to transpire next week is going to take place. The Dolphins are going to lose to the Jets next week. Teddy Bridgewater hurt himself today. Tua's not coming back. I don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for the Dolphins next week, but whoever it is, he sucks, he stinks, and the Jets are probably going to beat him. And the Bills are going to be playing for the number one seed, whether they win tomorrow on Monday Night Football or not. They're going to be playing for the number one overall seed in the first round bye in the AFC. So they're going to go and beat New England next week. This Steelers team is going to be in a position to make the playoffs if they just take care of business in Week 17. And they'll be playing the Browns. They're going to have a chance to beat the Cleveland Browns next week. And I'll just tell you this much right now. The job that Mike Tomlin has done with a young team. This is a young roster. There's some veterans, you know, obviously smattered across this roster. but this is a young Pittsburgh Steelers football team. You got a rookie quarterback. Your one of your better receivers is a rookie. Did you see the catch that George Pickens is a walking highlight? We talked about this kid already. I thought the Colts and other teams were negligent, Packers included, for passing on this kid and allowing him to fall into the lap of the Steelers. He made another highlight reel catch tonight. He's one of your better receivers. Deontay Johnson, after a slow start this year, is starting to come on. He's making plays. He had some big catches. Najee Harris. I had somebody tell me, I want to say it was 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, when they played the Colts on a Monday night and they beat the Colts, that Najee Harris looked like Trent Richardson and he sucked. And I said, we're not watching the same thing. All right. There are times where Najee Harris doesn't necessarily look the part of a first-round running back, when he doesn't look like Najee Harris. And I wasn't the biggest Najee Harris fan his junior year at Alabama. It wasn't until his senior year where he was ridiculous, and he was good in his junior season. I just saw more of it in his senior year that I finally said, okay, this guy's really good. You saw it again tonight, had the game-winning catch on the touchdown. Najee Harris is the truth. And I told that guy, about a month ago when they were on Monday Night Football, are you kidding me? He's nothing like Trent Richardson. I don't know what you're watching, but we're not watching the same guy, clearly. He's a second-year running back. Pat Freiermuth is a second-year tight end. That offensive line is pretty young across the board. I don't think there's one veteran across that board. I mean, maybe James, I forget what his name is, Daniels from Iowa that the Bears drafted a few years ago. Maybe he's the oldest guy, maybe 6-7 year vet, maybe. Like, that's a young offensive line they've got. That's a young team, man. I mean, Cam Hayward is probably the elder statesman on that team, but that's a relatively young secondary that they have. The linebacker position, it's mixed. It's not the youngest group. They're not old there. And obviously the front is, I think, another part of the team that's the oldest, with Watt and Hayward and those guys. But it's a relatively young football team. Okay, when your kicker and your defensive tackle are two of the oldest guys on the team, and everybody else is in their 20s, and we're talking low to mid 20s, you've got a relatively young football team. And so for him to do what he did this year, from 2-6 to 8-8 with a chance to make the playoffs in week 18, another masterpiece turned in by Mike Tomlin. And to think, I'm over here bitching and complaining about all this talent that we think we have and we can't find a way to win. And Mike Tomlin, it's never pretty with Mike Tomlin. That win against the Raiders last weekend, it wasn't pretty, but it's a win. We're not talking about them winning a 3-point affair last week. We're just talking about them finding a way to put another one in the left-hand column. And that's what this team does consistently, is just find ways to put another one in the left. I remember saying, well, not having a losing record streak is over this year. They're gonna suck. It's amazing how the NFL, it's all about ebbs and flows and how things can change just like that. A month ago, the Steelers were dead, the Packers were dead, and the Dolphins were in, and there were teams that that we were just looking at playing good football, and we just assumed this team's going to be a shoo-in for the playoffs. This team's going to be – the Panthers were dead. They were – the Buccaneers were in a fight today for their lives. There were so many teams that we thought were good, or at least, going to make the playoffs, and teams that we just counted out. And now you fast forward a month, and the Steelers are right there. The Patriots are right there. This is amazing. The Bucs finally clinched, but they not without a fight from the Panthers. The NFL is just wild and crazy, man. You never know what to expect. But one thing you can count on is that Steelers-Ravens is going to be a war, and that Mike Tomlin is going to find a way to win enough games to either qualify for postseason play or do a magnificent job. I mean, there were seasons in there. We talk about these years where, 9-7, or 8-8. Duck Hodges is the quarterback, right? Like, it's amazing what Mike Tomlin has been able to do. Landry Jones. There's been some seasons in there, man, where you go, what in the hell are the Steelers going to do now? Roethlisberger gets injured week 2 or 3, then he finds a way. And this is another one of those at the end of the year, whether they make it or not, if they win 9 games and still miss the postseason, this is another one of those years you put up there for Mike Tomlin when you say, I don't know what you guys want from Mike Tomlin. He may not be a perfect head coach. There may be some shortcomings there, but I'd take him as my head coach any day of the week. And it's seasons like this that reinforce that for me as they find a way to win this game. Again, it wasn't pretty, but you knew what it was going to be when you signed up for Steelers Ravens on a Sunday night. You knew what this was going to be. And another thing with these two teams, they rarely sweep each other. It's a lot of splits on the season series with these two teams because it's just how it goes, man. And they don't respect each other's house. It's almost as if they much rather win on the other team's turf than to just take care of business at home. A lot of getting beat on your own, field when these two teams, square off. So another big performance by the Steelers. And, man, this was impressive. On a night where the run game dominated, it was Kenny Pickett's arm on that final drive that really spearheaded them. And some big stops. And I didn't agree with one decision by the Ravens down the stretch. Look, I told you guys I'm not the biggest fan of Tyler Huntley, okay? He's did a better job this year than he did last year of leading his team. Last year, a lot of close losses. They struggled down the stretch without Lamar, and they missed the playoffs. This year, he's finding ways to win, but it's still much of the same. I wasn't impressed with him last year. I'm not impressed with him this year. That said, how about you let him throw the football? It was like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3 on that final possession that they had the ball before the Steelers scored the touchdown. If they get that first down, the Steelers are pretty much screwed. And you run it, and the Steelers get a stop. Like, there were 2 possessions that I thought altered the outcome of this game. That was one of them, where if you get that first down, the Steelers have to start using their timeouts. You're able to bleed a little bit more clock, and now they're in a different spot when they get the football back. Instead of having the ball back with like 4:20 left on the clock and all of your timeouts, they're going to get that football back with under 4 minutes to go and probably none of their timeouts. And depending on whether you get another first down, they may not get it back at all. Instead, you go conservative and you run it with J.K. Dobbins, and he gets stuffed, and you got to punt. I thought another possession was after the Justice Hill return. The Steelers had just gotten a field goal to make it 13-9. That was the opportunity for the knockout blow. At a bare minimum, you have to come away with a field goal on that possession so that a touchdown doesn't beat you. And that drop on 3rd down by Isaiah Likely, and it was a good defensive play, with the corner or safety getting in there and reaching in the cookie jar. But you got to find a way to catch that, because those 7-8 yards is the difference between Justin Tucker coming on the field for a 53, 52-yard field goal and them declining to have him kick a 60-yarder, which was the right decision. You punt that thing, okay? You have to get something. That's a massive return by Justice Hill. You have to get something out of that drive. And they got spooked after the first down play. They ran it. They lost a yard or 2. They got spooked, and they had Huntley throw it twice. They should have come back with the run. They should have come back with another run on 2nd down. They probably would have gotten 5 or 6 or 7 because that's what the norm was. That was the flavor of the night, which was a 5, 6, 7-yard run for each team every time their guys touched it. You take a look at the running game for each team and look at what the final tally. I was at one point I told my dad, I said, I'm telling you right now, Najee Harris has 100 yards rushing. And I know I think he ended up with 111, if I'm not mistaken, in the game. Najee Harris. 22 carries, 111 for Najee. Jalen Warren, 12 carries, 76 yards. The Ravens gave up 198 yards on the ground, almost 200 yards. I mean, yikes. And meanwhile, J.K. Dobbins, 17 for 93. He averaged over 5 yards a pop. And so both teams had success running the football. And so I would have come right back with another run after that, after that 2-yard loss or whatever it was. I'd have came back with another run instead of letting Tyler Huntley throw it twice and 2 incompletions. And next thing you know, you're out of field goal range. And honestly, the third down wasn't Huntley's fault. He throws it to a likely, and then he doesn't come down with it. It should have been caught. But again, a good play by the Steelers there. I don't want to take anything away from them, but he needs to secure that football. That's the difference between a field goal and not losing this game and having it be tied at 16 and losing this game 16-13. So I thought those were the 2 possessions that stuck out like a sore thumb for me in this game for the Ravens in the second half, where they didn't come away with any points. And in a game like this, field goals are paramount. Taking those possessions and getting something out of them is a must if you're going to win a game like this. And there were too many empty possessions in the fourth quarter in particular for the Baltimore Ravens to win this football game. They had opportunities when they were up 13-6 and up 13-9 to put this game away, and they didn't take advantage. And the Steelers gave them every chance. The stupid penalty by Cam Hayward when they were only going to get a field goal, which resulted in the Isaiah Likely touchdown a play later. That was a soul crusher. You get a rare miss from Boswell in this game. And so that aided the Ravens in having a nice, lead in this game. I mean, there were so many opportunities, and the Ravens failed to take advantage of it. And now they need help to try and still win the division. And we'll see if they get the help that they need, because Cincinnati plays tomorrow night against the Buffalo Bills, and that should be a dandy of a ball game. But I wonder if Lamar Jackson's going to be ready next week. They need him. They're in the playoffs, so winning the division is the difference between winning the division and not winning the division is a home playoff game. How important is it to you? Rather have a healthy Lamar Jackson, maybe a little rusty, but he'll be fully healthy come playoff time, or would you like to roll the dice, see if you can win the division, get a home playoff game, and get Lamar a little bit of work heading into the postseason? That's a question that John Harbaugh will be asked. But what a war! Mark Andrews is a beast. 9 catches, 100 yards tonight. He was really the only offense that the Ravens had, and really that's what he is for them anyway, right? He's really the sole offensive weapon that they have in Baltimore, and he was huge again tonight, but he can't do it by himself. You know what's crazy about the Ravens is that all of the receivers that they have right now, pretty much, none of them were there when the season started. And Deshaun Jackson and Andy Isabella and Samuel Watkins, like none of these guys were there when the season started. These are all guys that they just acquired, during the course of the season. And that just tells you and obviously they've had some injuries and some things go awry, Bateman getting injured and things of that nature, but they just tells you what they think of the receiver position. They've got to do better. They've got to do better. But big win for the Steelers. They're now 8-8 on the season. A win next week coupled with losses by the Patriots and the Dolphins will get these Steelers into the postseason. I think it's a realistic possibility. I like their chances of beating Cleveland, and also the Bills are going to beat the Patriots next week. That's going to happen. The one that's a little iffy is the Jets beating the Dolphins, but I just don't like what the Dolphins are. I don't like the level of confidence that they're playing with, and I don't like their quarterback situation with yet another injury to the position with Teddy Bridgewater getting banged up today. I don't know who's going to – Skylar Thompson, I don't know who's going to play quarterback for them next week. But, I mean, if Teddy can't go, and obviously Tua's in the concussion protocol, if he can't go, they're screwed. I like the Steelers' chances from 2-6 and on the deck to off the deck and 8-8 and looking like they may be able to win this thing on the scorecards. Amazing. Amazing. So let's get to the comment section. I won't bore you tonight. We'll get in and get out. We'll get in and get out. So Gregory Lightbody writes, Washington needs to get either Carr, Garoppolo, Tannehill. I don't want any of those guys. I don't want any more retread quarterbacks. I mean, if you want to keep rolling the dice and you want to keep going through the same song and dance, knock yourself out. I'm over that. I'm done with that. Either you continue to build this team up, keep what you have, see what you got in Sam Howell, or you get one of these young quarterbacks in the draft. But I'm tired of kicking the tires on retread quarterbacks from other teams that failed in their last spot, thinking that they're going to come to Washington and all of a sudden turn into Kurt Warner. I'm over that. Sick of it. Don't want to do that anymore. Been there, done that. Don't want to do it again. Gregory Lightbody also writes, I'm looking at guys like Ringo, Skoronski, maybe Mayer in the first for Washington. It's a long process. We'll see what happens. We don't even know where Washington's drafting yet. We don't know what the free agency. So often we love to talk about what needs to be done in the draft, but you don't even know what's going to happen in free agency. Washington can sign a corner, sign a this or that. And next thing you know, those needs have been taken care of. Now you're not really looking for that in the draft. So, we'll see what happens. It's hard to say what's going to happen right now. Gregory Lightbody also writes, I don't know how to feel about Bezos as owner. Hope he's not another Snyder. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I just don't want Snyder owning the team anymore. Really don't care who the next owner is. He can't be any worse than Snyder. He can only be as bad as Snyder, but he can't be any worse. So I'm willing to take my chances there. Grass may not be green on the other side. It can't be any browner. Okay. So I don't really give a shit who the owner is at this point. I just don't want his name to be Daniel Snyder at this point. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Let me go ahead and put this up here so you guys know. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. I'm on the road right now. I'm out of the office, so it's not always going to look like this. But if you are new, there are two ways to have your comment read on the air. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read if it's pertinent. If time permits, we'll get to your comment. Also, if you want to jump to the front of the line, the best way to have your comment read is to super chat. Go straight to the front line and ensure that your comment gets read. And so, got one here from Video Channel who writes, Sup, Lou? What's going on, Video Channel? He says, death, taxes, and Mike T over 500. He's not there yet, but boy, he's knocking on the damn door again. And it seems like it's one of those definites in life, right? You may be able to add him to that list of, death, taxes, and Mike Tomlin over 500. If he gets it this year, you got to bow down to this dude. I mean, already we're in year 15 and he's never had a losing season. I mean, that speaks for itself. But if he somehow is able to take this group, and he's done it before, this is why it's not a surprise, but we left him for dead. The difference is those years, whether it was, Duck Hodges or, Josh Dobbs or, Landry Jones, or whomever, Mason Rudolph, whatever he was doing, all the different things that were thrown at him, they were always hovering around 500. They'd be 5-7 or 6-7 or, 7-6. But it was never 2-6. It was never this. With a rookie quarterback, with a young core, it was never this. And for him to dig himself out of this hole, super impressive, man. Super impressive. And again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. A lot of Steelers fans complain about Mike Tomlin. I'll take him if you don't want him. Point blank. End of discussion. Gregory Lightbody says, I want us to go after Mike Gesicki and Evan Ingram in free agency. They're not going to do that. We have 87 tight ends, and they just got the other kid from, I want to say Virginia Tech, Hodges, off of IR. I think they like him a lot. They're not going to do anything at the tight end position. They don't view tight end as a need. So you can go ahead and cancel Christmas on that. They're not spending any money, and I wouldn't advise them to spend big money. Those two guys, Ingram probably made himself some good money this year by essentially betting on himself on that 1 year. in Jacksonville. And Mike Gesicki is way more talented than he was, has been given an opportunity to display this year. Someone's going to give Mike Gesicki, I think, good money to be, a legit pass catching. He could be every bit as good as Mark Andrews in this league. He has the talent to do it. You give him the opportunity, a much bigger role than what he's gotten this year in Miami, and I think he could shine somewhere. I think he's going to get good money. It won't be from Washington. I can assure you of that. Niners fan says, I've always been skeptical of our defense this year. Our secondary is not good outside of Mooney Ward. Hufanga gives up 2 big plays every game. If we don't get pressure, it's trouble. I've seen that. Your defense, I already told you, the one weakness has always been, this goes back to your 2019 season when you were dominant. It's always been the secondary. That's always been the issue with this defense. The front 7 is as legit as it gets. That back end is always an issue, and it continues to be that. So I was shocked that the Raiders were able to have the type of success that they had today and score as many points, especially with them benching Derek Carr. And giving their young quarterback an opportunity. I think this was his first career start, if I'm not mistaken. And he knows the system. I don't want to make it seem like, he'd been in New England with Josh McDaniels. He knows the offense. So it's not like he didn't know what was going on. But I was shocked that he was able to have as much success as he had today against that 49ers defense. But then again, I'm not shocked because the Raiders have talent. And that secondary is something, if you don't get pressure, like you just said, Washington had opportunities last week against this 49ers defense. And just because they aren't good on offense and they don't make the plays that are there to be made, they only scored 20. They could have scored those same 30 whatever points the Raiders scored today. So I'm not shocked. That said, I still believe in the 49ers. But they're not invincible. I've been saying this the entire time, which is why I wanted in the playoffs. Anybody can win in the NFC. You saw the Eagles, even though they don't have Jalen Hurts, they're flawed, just like everybody else in the NFC. No team is dominant really on either side of the bracket, but there isn't a dominant team in the NFC. For the second time in about 5 weeks, the Vikings get destroyed, right? You've got the 49ers gave up 31 to a quarterback making his first career NFL start. You got the Eagles losing 2 straight. Again, both without Jalen Hurts. I get it, but that's still something to note, right? Not playing their best football heading into the postseason. And we'll see what happens when Hurts comes back. And he'll play next week at home against the Giants to try to lock up the NFC East. But again, don't really love what the Eagles are doing right now. Dallas is turning the football over at an alarming rate, okay? But they're dangerous. They can score, but they're turning it over, right? Like, everyone's got flaws in the NFC. Every single team. And the 49ers are no different. Somebody's going to come out of there with a chance, but it's wide open. That's why the NFC playoffs are going to be such fun. Both sides of the bracket, because the NFC, I think the draw on the NFC side of the bracket is the unpredictability. You really don't know what you're going to get. On the AFC side, it's star power at the quarterback position because every team in the playoffs, if it goes the way that it's supposed to go, every team in the playoffs will have a young stud QB. If the Steelers get in, it really doesn't matter if the Steelers get in or if the Patriots. I don't know if we can call Mac Jones or Kenny Pickett a young stud, but I really like Kenny Pickett, probably more so than Mac Jones, right? But both of those are young, good, solid young quarterbacks. You feel like you can do some things around, right? But you look at the rest of the field in the AFC, Herbert, Burrow, and Jackson, and Mahomes, and Allen. Like, these are the quarterbacks that we'll be watching squaring off against teams. Like, and Lawrence. For the Jaguars, like, it's a star-studded AFC field at the quarterback position. So you're looking at these young quarterbacks, and some will be trying to come of age right before our very eyes. You don't have that in the NFC. You just got a bunch of teams scratching, clawing, trying to find their way out of that round to the next round and looking to survive in advance. So either way, it's going to be fun stuff watching the playoffs this postseason. Niners fan says, however, Brock showed me something today. He rebounded from his mistakes, picked up our offense when we needed him. We have the 2 seed, but I'm scared about Green Bay and the wild card. This was the most impressive the Packers have looked pretty much all season. Rodgers had it going. He seemed to be more in sync and in rhythm with his receivers. The defense is playing. I've always liked Green Bay's defense, even though they've struggled. Remember the 300-yard rushing night they had, they gave up against Philadelphia. They've had some other games, where they've been questionable defensively. But I've always liked that defense. If they're relatively healthy, that's a really solid defense in Green Bay, I think. And I still think you can take advantage of them. But if Rodgers gets his act together and they're relatively healthy, look out for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it's the same thing with Tom Brady. We can talk all the shit we want about Brady and the Bucs, but you really don't want to see him in the playoffs. You say all you want about Green Bay. You really don't want Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. It's a realistic possibility that they could be in there. All they got to do is beat Detroit, and things could be very, very interesting. So I thought Brock Purdy was outstanding today. Yep, he made mistakes. It's not about the mistakes. Young quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. That's a part of the growing process, right? What I want to see is how you respond to those mistakes. We spent all day, Washington fans spent all day, complaining, bitching, and moaning about Carson Wentz. One of the problems with Carson Wentz is he's mentally weak. He makes a mistake, and that turns into another mistake, and it turns into another mistake because he can't overcome adversity. What you want to see from a young quarterback is, okay, yeah, you made a mistake. Guy made a play, or you made a bad read. The mistake was made, turnover. How do you respond? Brock Purdy showed me that he's unflappable. Yep, mistakes are going to happen, but I got this. And so that bodes well. I'd much rather have him make those types of mistakes now in the regular season, see how he responds to them, than those same mistakes occur in the postseason. So get him out of your system now, learn from them, become a better quarterback because of it. It'll help him lead this team come postseason time. Niners fan says, what's up with the Shanahan coaches all failing down the stretch? McDaniel, Salah have fallen off of a cliff. I don't think you can lump all of those guys together. And obviously, both of those coaches you just named had quarterback injuries. And not everybody's as fortunate as San Francisco to have a 7th-round pick step in and play the way that the 49ers, have gotten the kind of play they've gotten out of Brock Purdy. Everyone's not fortunate. Your season could have been just like those teams' seasons if Brock Purdy sucked ass. You'd be having a totally different tune about what happened to your season. You'd be right in that conversation with them. If Tua isn't injured, we're not having this conversation about the Dolphins. If, Mike White doesn't get hurt the first time, we're probably not having that conversation about the Jets. Literally, those were winnable games that Mike White wasn't able to participate in. And now the season's done. They lost so much momentum having to go back to Zach Wilson that by the time Mike White came back, it was too late. All the momentum was gone. That team wasn't the same team that he last played with in Minnesota when they almost upset the Vikings in Minnesota. It's a totally different team. Winnable games that were there, no longer there. Now they're out of it. Again, that's the NFL. I mean, you guys were fortunate. Not everybody is fortunate. So I don't think it's Shanahan coaches, collapse. It's circumstance to this league. Everybody's got injuries. Some teams are able to deal with it better than others. Unfortunately for those two teams, weren't able to really circumvent those injuries the way they would have preferred. Niners fan writes, finally, we got to stop writing off Mike Tomlin and just accept he will never have a losing season. I think we're getting to that point. I've been there, but I did write him off this year. So I can't say that I'm there yet, but if he does it this year, I'm just going to write him. I'm just going to write down 9 wins for him before the season starts. And if he wants to increase that total, knock yourself out. But I'm just going to put down in pencil. I'm going to pencil in 9 for him if he finds a way to get this team to 9-8. Whether they make the postseason or not, it's a hell of an accomplishment and feat to get this team that was once 2-6 to 8-8, potentially 9-8. Speaks volumes as to what Mike Tomlin is as a head coach. Beast Mode says, you compared Tom Brady to that father that you wait to pick up for the weekend. Did he arrive? That's what you were talking about earlier. I had no clue what you were referring to. No, I mean, look, Brady played well today. Those bombs to Mike Evans were timely, and they were they were down 21-10, and Brady went apeshit. But it was the Mike Evans connection today that really spurred that comeback and ultimately that win. Look, your dad is gonna come sometimes. He's gonna arrive to pick you up sometimes. He's not gonna always. This is the thing. This is why you believe. If your dad never came to pick you up, then you would never think he was coming in the first place. It's that he tells you he's coming. He comes one time, and then the next 2 times he doesn't show up. So you start to believe he's not coming. And then the 4th time he shows up again. And then the next 3 times he's either extremely late or he doesn't come at all. So you start to lose confidence. And right when you don't believe anymore, boom, dad shows up again. That's what today was. But it's still Tom Brady, okay? You still have to respect him. But after a while of that occurring back and forth, you start to lose confidence in your dad's ability to own up to his word, right? To live up to what he said. I still feel that way about Tom Brady. Even though today was a big win for them to clinch the division, I still need to see them do it again because they've been so inconsistent this season. So do it again. That's my challenge to them. They're now in. They're going to be the 4th seed. More likely than not, they'll be hosting Dallas in Wild Card Weekend. Do it again. Let's see. All right. Skip over those. Let's see. Red Wings. Pittsburgh has really got an exciting young core. I'm curious to see where they go in the next couple of years. Really enjoying Kenny's slow yet steady development. He was the only guy in this draft. And I talk about this, and I've talked about this year in particular because you're seeing guys like Brock Purdy have success in the league and Kenny Pickett. And I can't help but just look at the amount of time they spent as starters in college football. And I can't help but think how that has affected their development. It has fast-tracked them to be able to come in and play at a high level relatively quickly. The more football you play, the better off you are as an NFL prospect. Now, you still have to have talent. You can't be void of talent and just have a bunch of collegiate starts. There are a lot of guys that fit into that category. Still got to be talented. But if you play a ton of college football and you're successful, I think that bodes well for you having an opportunity to have an impact in the NFL, even if it's only in a backup capacity. So, Kenny Pickett's experience at Pitt really did wonders for him. And you're seeing it. Again, the turnovers were the big problem early on this season. But he did some really good things. Even when they were losing games early this season and he was turning over, you saw flashes. His numbers aren't gaudy. They're not eye-popping numbers. But when they needed him last week against the Raiders, touchdown drive. When they needed him tonight against the Ravens, touchdown drive. And those throws, that throw to Steven Sims across the middle of the field, are you serious? Like, don't tell me this guy doesn't have an arm. That throw was in between 2 Raven defenders, and I still don't know how he got in there. And that's a ballsy throw as well. It takes some balls to pull that one off. Kevin says, how about them cheeseheads? Man, that was an impressive win, and the streak that they've gotten on, very impressive. Now you got one more to cap it off and to make that improbable run to the postseason. And all bets are off once you get there. The last time the Packers won the Super Bowl, they were in a similar position like they are this year as a wild card. They were written off. They were a 6th seed, and they ran through the entire playoffs and won the Super Bowl. I don't think that's going to happen this year, but this is the type of year where the shit could transpire. This is the type of year where anything goes, which is why I said just get in, especially in the NFC. All bets are off. You're one more game away. We'll see. Kevin says they don't want us in the playoffs. I know I wouldn't if I were a team that was already in. I wouldn't want to see Green Bay. You already heard Niners fans say, I don't really think too kindly or fondly of having to potentially play Aaron Rodgers in the first round. I'm not really looking forward to that. No, they don't want you in the playoffs, but you got to get there first. You're not there yet, but you're one game away. HHC Lunar writes, how about Daniel Jones saving his career and turning himself into a franchise quarterback with no wide receivers? Also, Tyler Huntley is not the one. I've been saying that about Tyler Huntley. You know, a lot of people wanted to crown him last year. Washington fans, you know, a lot of our fans are so thirsty for a quarterback. They'll take anything. I had the dog food analogy with us. When you're starving, you'll eat anything. You could feed our fan base dog food at quarterback, and we'll still devour it because we're so hungry. And there were fans, hey, we should go after that Ravens backup quarterback. Man, he's really good. I was like, man, shut up. Stop talking to me. If you think Tyler Huntley is a starting quarterback in this league, you need to stop talking. Don't say nothing else to me, right? Daniel Jones, isn't it amazing what a coach can do for a quarterback's career? I mean, seriously, we've had this discussion as Washington fans all day long about the impact of coaching and what it can do and how it can change the fortunes of a team, right? Whether negatively or positively. In our case, it's impacted us negatively. We don't have a good coaching staff. That's been the thing that's been consistent all year long, is that we are not a well-coached team. That said, look at, and I just think about just two players in particular. Think about Jared Goff. After his rookie season with Jeff Fisher as his coach, everybody thought that, to a man, every Rams fan, every NFL fan thought Jared Goff sucked ass and that the Rams just wasted a bunch of draft capital trading up to number one to take Jared Goff. Then they get Sean McVay in year 2 of Jared Goff, and look at what happened to his career. He actually went to a Super Bowl. People forget that. Jared Goff played in a Super Bowl. Daniel Jones was viewed as a quarterback that at best is a backup. Maybe a Mitchell Trubisky type, you know, toolsy, but you know, at his core, at his best, he's Ryan Tannehill, right? Maybe goes somewhere in his second act, you know, has a solid career, good defense around him, and an excellent run game, and he can, you know, do enough to fill in the gaps and the blanks. Enter in Brian Daboll, and to your point, no receivers, hardly any skill guys. I mean, their tight ends aren't anything to talk about. And look at what Daniel Jones is doing this year. It's amazing what a coach can do for a team or for a player in particular. I mean, look at Tua. Look at Tua and Mike McDaniel. Like, Tua was left for dead. Nobody was talking about Tua. And a coach that believes in him came in there and built an offense around Tua and his skill set. And look at what Tua did this year before all the injuries really started to ravage his season. Look at what Tua was doing. Don't tell me coaching doesn't make a difference, because it does. Video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, the only positive about the Wentz trade is the ability to cut him without dead money attached, which is why we had to eat the $28 million, which was why, you know, we had to cut players and make sure that we were in a position to move on from him if it didn't work. And that's why a lot of people were complaining, but I said, look, it's a necessary evil. You don't want to, you know, tear up his contract, give him new money, and extend that thing out. And now you're on the hook for, you know, guarantees for another 2-3 years like we did with Alex Smith. That was a massive mistake. We traded for Alex Smith, and then we ripped up – we didn't even have to rip up his old contract. He still had like 2 or 3 years left on his contract. We ripped that thing up, gave him new money, and then we all know the catastrophe that struck in 2018, and now we were on the hook for all this dead money for the next 3 years, right? 2 years or so, 2-3 years. No one wants to be in that position. So they ate the 28, and now we can move on, like you said, with no penalty. John Wynn says, yo, I feel like Lamar Jackson should be playing in this year's postseason run because, number one, I don't know what's going on with Tyler Huntley right after he got the pick for no reason. Lamar will be back. I don't know if he was close to playing this week, but I think there's a chance he can play next week. And if he doesn't, he'll be back for the playoffs. HHC Lunar says, I swear Mike Tomlin always does this. So dude just knows how to win, man. Dude just knows how to win. Jay says, I can't believe people thought Huntley was a starting NFL quarterback. I mean, there were a lot of people. When I tell you a lot, that were buying this man as a starter. And I'm glad that people are getting to see that. Look, he's a solid NFL backup quarterback for this particular team. All right. For this particular team, he's the perfect backup for Lamar Jackson. If I'm the Ravens, though, I'm looking for better as a backup. I'm looking to upgrade him. Milfman 1986 says, would rather Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton? Also, when will you do the best show on YouTube by far? Super friends for you. You four have such great chemistry. We're probably going to have to tee that up here shortly. You know, with everybody except Washington getting in, it's an exciting time. Probably tee that up after week 18. I doubt I do it this week just because of, you know, the schedule, everything going on. But that first week heading into the postseason, I'll see if I can link up with the fellas, get everybody on, and you know, I'll just narrate. I'll just let them talk about going to the playoffs and what that feels like, because we won't be a part of it. So definitely be doing that soon. Jim Harbaugh knows how to win as well. I love Sean Payton. Love his energy. Love what he brings to the table. That's a toughie because I've seen Harbaugh do more with less, and Peyton seems to I haven't seen him do anything without Drew Brees. And the minute that he didn't have a stable quarterback situation, he bailed. He quit on the Saints. He bitched up. So I kind of would roll with Jim Harbaugh. Dark Sealer says, Kenny Pickett flashed on that last drive. They need to give him a competent OC and see how good he can be. I've heard so much about the lack of confidence in the Steelers offensive coordinator. And you keep hearing about it So there's probably a problem there with him. He's probably not very good. That said, Kenny Pickett's flashed this season numerous times. He did it against the Raiders last week. He did it again this week on a late drive to take the lead. He's growing. Somebody said it earlier. It's slow growth, but it's growth nonetheless. And you see it week after week after week. And he's not turning the football over. He's taking care of the rock. He's not putting it in harm's way. So you're seeing it. I don't see the Steelers switching coordinators, though. That's not really Mike Tomlin's thing. But we'll see. Maybe they do something. Maybe they don't. Michi, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Michi writes, I'm 18, and in my lifetime, the Giants have been mostly awful, and this year really reignited my love for football in this Giants franchise. When your team wins and you can see light at the end of the tunnel, because even if the Giants get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, the Giants play hard. The Giants are competitive. The Giants are well coached. And this is the thing that makes you feel really good about what you're watching, is that this doesn't have to be a one-off. This doesn't have to be oh, man, we caught lightning in a bottle. You're thinking to yourself, we're doing all of this with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and practically nothing else on offense. We're doing this on defense with Leonard Williams being banged up for most of the year, Azeez Ojulari being out for a huge chunk of the season. Kayvon Thibodeau is just scratching the surface. We've been without our starting cornerback, Adoree Jackson, for the last 5 to 6 weeks. Like, and all of this shit is coming together, and you're looking around and you're saying, damn it, man. We're only going to get better. This coach is a beast. We got a new GM, and we think this guy's got a chance to change the game. There's so much positivity right now. You've got to feel good if you're a Giants fan, because you're ahead of schedule. You weren't supposed to be here this year. This was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Year one of this coaching staff, you weren't supposed to be here. You weren't supposed to be a 9-win playoff team. And yet, here you are. So, yeah, I definitely get it. Totally. Let's see. John Wynn says, can Washington find a faster running back player like Kenneth Walker from Seattle, for example. I don't think they're looking for that right now. You know, I think that's something we could have a conversation about maybe 2 years down the road when Antonio Gibson is a free agent. They got one more year of Gibson before he's a free agent. I don't think he's going to be paid in Washington, and that's when you start looking for another guy. And I do think that other running back needs to have some speed. I do agree. DJ23 says, not going to lie, Lou, I'm probably more pissed off than Ron that we are not in the playoffs. We all are disappointed. You can be pissed. I'm more disappointed than I am mad because, you know, you could see the writing on the wall when you start doing things like switching quarterbacks this late in the season, and you could see some of the injuries that were cropping up at the wrong time. You could kind of see the writing on the wall. And then the week 15, that was the one that did it for me. Week 15 against the Giants. When we came out lifeless, he was scared as a coach. The team really reflected his energy. They came out tight and nervous. I thought that after that game, I kind of was like, yeah, this isn't what I was expecting. That's when I started to say, you know what, Ron might not really be like, I started going back to the way I felt after the Tennessee loss, which is disappointing. Sathan Murthy writes, what draft QBs do you like for Washington so far? I can't tell you right now. I have no clue. Haven't watched enough of those quarterbacks to be able to make an honest assessment. I could probably tell you more about the quarterbacks I don't like than the ones I do like, but even that's not fair because I still need to watch those quarterbacks to fairly assess their talents and what I think of them. J Mart writes, sup LT, wanted to add my super chat from earlier about QB play. I was just saying we need better QB play and not a TB or A-Rod. Goff and Jones are examples that QBs are of QBs that are playing well. And my point is, those are teams where they're well coached. That's the difference. The Lions are a well-coached football team. The Giants are a well-coached football team. Defensively, offensively, those are good football teams being coached. That's not what we have in Washington. So, again, I've already said this. If you're a member of the MOBB, which you are, you heard me say this before. I've said this to the entire fan base. We would have won 9 games this season already if Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback of this organization. And that's with subpar coaching. But we would have won more games with Ryan Tannehill. That caliber of quarterback. We don't even have that on our roster. But you take what you have and you coach it up and you get the most out of it. And we had enough to be at 9-10 wins right now with Heineke at quarterback, with Wentz. But we don't have a smart enough group. We don't have a diligent enough group that those teams that you mentioned those quarterbacks for have. Rich writes, I wasn't originally on the fire everyone train until you brought up some good points. And he said he didn't know we could be eliminated. Get this old man out of here. Brian Callahan, you mean, I don't know if you're talking about old man Callahan, but I'm not a big fire everybody guy because usually that doesn't solve anything. If you, like somebody just said, well, we just need better quarterback play and that would help, but that's not the only issue that we have. All that would do was mask the bigger issues, which are coaching, corner, linebacker, offensive. Like there's still other glaring needs, but above all else, quarterback and coaching staff. And you can't overcome poor coaching, okay? Unless you have a Hall of Fame quarterback. Which we don't have and we haven't had in this organization for decades upon decades. So unless you're going to have a well-coached team, you better have that quarterback, and we don't. So this is what's stunting this team's growth right now is the lack of coaching right now in Washington. It's a shame. Gregory Lightbody says, currently Washington has the 14th pick with the potential to be a top 10 pick. It better be a corner or a left tackle. Well, we'll see what happens. Jay says, which Commanders QB will be inactive next Sunday? Probably, if I'm Washington, it'd be Carson Wentz. There's no reason for him to play another snap as Washington quarterback. He embarrassed himself today. There's no reason for him to even be active next week. He's played his last. I told my sister and my dad, I said he's played his last snap for the Washington Commanders. You know, after the Browns game, there's no reason for him to be rolled out there again next week for what? Either go back to Heineke next week, or you just play Sam Howell. And at this point, what's the point of playing either one of those guys? Just put in Sam Howell. For what's the purpose of playing Heineke? We know what he is. What's the purpose of playing Wentz? He won't be here next year. Let's play Sam Howell and see what you got. You know, and if he ends on a good note, that'll give him some confidence heading into the offseason. And then, you know, you see what you do, whether you get a quarterback or you draft one or you go in free agency or whatever the case may be, he'll be in the mix next year, you know? Even if he stinks it up, he'll still be here. He's a 5th-round pick. So, and Wentz should be inactive next week. Gregory Lightbody says, my issue is that the quarterback class isn't good this draft. Will Levis sucks. Also, Pickett was just as good as Howell in college. I don't know if the two are the same. You know, Howell had his moments. You probably could say that. You could even argue that Howell was better than Pickett in college, you know, but it doesn't matter. You know, one was a 1st-round pick and they saw his attributes and felt like he was a 1st-round, and the other was a 5th-round pick. The league spoke on these quarterbacks. The league spoke loud and clear on what they felt about Sam Howell. And so he's got to prove it. The biggest difference between the two is Kenny Pickett's probably a legit 6'2", 6'3". Sam Howell is literally 6 feet tall. That makes a difference, man. Nobody wants Baker Mayfield back there 6 feet tall. You better be a super athlete or you better be one hell of a quarterback if you're going to be 6 feet tall. You've got to be able to stand out at 6 feet. Mega says, there are so many big games next week. What game do you think will be the Sunday Night Football game? Well, they're gonna let the Bengals game play out because if the Bengals lose tomorrow, then the Sunday night game could easily be Bengals Ravens, right? That's a possibility. I still contend that because Jacksonville and Tennessee is already a known commodity, it's already a win and you're in scenario, and it's the only one left where two teams playing, one will get in, the other will be eliminated. That I think is too intriguing for the league to turn down. You could look at Green Bay and Detroit and say that, but this is the problem. Detroit could win that game next week and not get into the playoffs because Seattle wins next week. And Seattle won head-to-head against Detroit earlier this season. And so they would own the tiebreaker. Seattle is also 8-8. If Seattle wins and they're 9-8 and Detroit wins and they're 9-8, Seattle owns the tiebreaker. So you can't make that game because you give it a competitive advantage. I think the only game that is a standalone game where no other game is dependent upon that game is Jacksonville and the Titans. And because of that, I think that's the game we're going to get. Every other game, there is a dependent game, whether it's they need someone else to lose or another game is dependent upon the outcome of that game, what's going to happen. And you can't do that because you're given a competitive advantage. So I think the only game that's a standalone game that doesn't involve any other games is Jacksonville, Tennessee, and I think they'll make that the Sunday night game. So we'll see. Rich says, what team do we steal to get a GM and or coach from? As you suggested, the Bengals have you have any other teams in mind who haven't already been recently robbed? I don't know about who's another hot candidate, what teams have great assistant GMs. I don't know. I don't know what that's alike around the league. I haven't really tried to assess anything. That's not my deal. That's not my area of expertise. I just know what I know. I just know I want a general manager from a successful program where they've done it through the draft, they've done it the right way, and now you've got a guy that's been shadowing this GM for 7 years. He's been his assistant, his right-hand man, and now he's ready to spread his wings and fly away and do his own thing. That's what I'm looking for. I don't know, where that exists. I'm pretty sure there are one or two other places around the league that haven't been plucked quite yet, but I'm looking for one of those type guys. But I couldn't tell you where that exists. I just know what I want. Drew P., Cowboys fan here. Is this the end of the road for Rivera? Going back to Wentz is a fireable offense, in my opinion. It is for me as well. It's not the act of going back to Wentz as much as it is going back to Wentz and doubling down by not benching him after the man showed you in his first 3 possessions that he wasn't going to offer you any value today. He gave you an out to bench him and to go back to Heineke and right or wrong. And you instead doubled down and you dug yourself a deeper hole. And I said this before the game last week. I said this is a big decision, Ron, and this can really change how people view you. It's already happening. I saw somebody sent me a tweet from Mike Wilbon, who is one of the biggest Ron Rivera fans. Mike Wilbon, matter of fact, I can read you the tweet that somebody sent me. And I said this was going to happen, and this was the danger of making this decision. And this is what you get paid for as a coach. You go with your gut, you make these decisions, but understand that these have consequences today, right? So JP, my guy John Perez, sent me this tweet from Mike Wilbon, who writes, I love Ron Rivera. He played for my favorite team ever, the 85 Bears. He's a worthy man and head coach, but starting Carson Wentz today with everything on the line for Washington was about as dumb a decision as a coach can make. I said this to Ron last week. I said, I hope you know what you're doing making this decision, because the safest thing you could do is just stick it out with Heineke and nobody would blink. But if you go back to Wentz and it's the wrong decision, you're going to be filleted, okay? If it works, you'll be praised and you'll get all the credit that you've been looking for when you made this trade. But understand that the risk and the reward are not the same, okay? The risk is much greater than the reward and the payoff, because you could have made the playoffs with Heineke, right? Like, nobody cared who the quarterback was. Just make the playoffs. The risk is so great that you could lose your job. We wouldn't even be talking about losing your job with Heineke as the quarterback. We wouldn't have had that same reaction that we had today. Yeah, could be the end of the road for him. I don't think it will be, because of the situation, the circumstances surrounding this organization. Is it going to be sold? All that good stuff. Daniel Snyder being the owner, he's pretty safe because of the situation. Any other organization that's relatively stable, he's probably fired after next week's game. John Wynn says, as a Seahawks fan, once my team is in the playoffs, I'm scared about playing against the Packers in the playoffs, because the last time we just got hammered by them in 2019. They've been, a problem for you. Even the game that you guys beat them to get to the Super Bowl that one year, I want to say it was 2013, that you should have lost. They've always been a tough out for you guys. Let's see. J Mart, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, J Mart. Right. Oops, excuse me. All right. Here we go. J Mark says we were 7-5 and we went 0-3-1, maybe 0-4-1. I don't know. I don't want to say the C word, but damn, it just keeps happening with these epic collapses. I'm tired of being sick and tired. Yeah, man. It's when we were doing the show earlier today. It's just mind-boggling that on November the 27th, this team was 7-5. And if you would have told me there was a chance that we wouldn't win another game this season, I said this already earlier. I would have bet every single cent that I owned that we would have won at least one more game, possibly 2 or 3. And there wasn't any way you would have gotten me. You could have bet me anything if you would have said, bro, y'all not winning another game this season. I would have taken that bet 10 times over. I would have given whomever made that, I would have gave them 10-1 odds with it. Like, bro, it's whatever you want, man. It ain't no way we gonna go winless down the stretch. Are you kidding me? No way. And then look at where we are. I mean, it's almost mind-numbing to see how poorly they played today. I mean, just mind-numbing. Alex Hoy says, where do you think Ron Rivera's mental status is at right now? I mean, he knows he screwed up. You know, he knows that. I think he didn't think the situation through when he made the comments he made at his presser. He just made things. It was already a poor game, and the way that they went out in a game that they had to win is already a terrible effort by his team. That's not even the story after the game. The story that set social media ablaze is the fact that he didn't even know they could be eliminated today. So he made it worse. Jay says, the Browns game reminded me of Haskins' last game in Washington versus the Panthers. Wouldn't be shocked if Ron released Wentz tomorrow. No, they're not. It doesn't make any sense to get rid of him tomorrow. They got one more game. They'll get rid of him after the season, and they'll move on. If they got rid of him tomorrow, sure, knock yourself out. I mean, tomorrow, February 27th, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at all when they get rid of him. He's going to be gone. So, Beast Mode says, Steelers have only had 3 head coaches in their history. The owners know how to run an organization. I don't know if that's true or not. It may be. I just know they haven't had but 3 coaches over the last 60 years or whatever, 50 years. Between Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and now Mike Tomlin, they just, like you said, they know how to do it, man. They know how to do this. That's what you call a stable organization. All right. Let's see. Captain Spartan says, what's up, Lou? Just found out there was a Steelers bar in my city, and it was absolutely awesome tonight. Kenny might be something. Only wish stats a little higher. Still fire the OC Matt Canada. Again, you've been singing that song since earlier in the season. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't think he's going to get fired, but we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do at the end of the day. I think you got something in Kenny Pickett. Me and Boss were talking tonight, and he was like, I like this dude. I think they got a quarterback. So I think a lot of people feel that way already. J-Rod, let's see. Dallas needs to slay the demon called Tom Brady in that 4-5 matchup. I don't mind the Eagles winning the division. I told my dad, I said, the best thing you could do is stay right at number 5 because you're probably going to win a playoff game. And once you win one playoff game, that is all the momentum you need to make a run. Styles make fights, especially in the playoffs. You meet the wrong team and you go home just like that. You get the right matchup, you win one game, and all of a sudden you're playing with confidence, and next thing you know, you look up and you're in the championship game. So if I were the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, you want to win the division. You want the first round bye. You want the number 1 seed. You want teams to have to come to Dallas, all that. We've been there, done that with Dallas before. Them being at home doesn't mean a damn thing. What you want of least resistance to the Super Bowl, I honestly believe that path is the 5 seed. But again, we will see. We will see. Abel Ambrosio writes, I'm tired of seeing 7 wins back-to-back. Time to clean house. And also, why doesn't Wentz look for Terry? Something Heineke always did. That was something that I noted earlier. Like, he wasn't looking for Terry. He was looking for Jahan. He was looking for Logan Thomas. He wasn't looking for Terry McLaurin. So it is what it is. It is what it is. James says, with the Steelers win, the Commanders move up to 14th pick in the draft. Again, that's cool. I mean, it doesn't mean much for me. It doesn't move the needle for me because it's right where we pick all the time. We're always around 7 wins. We're always in the 11 to 18 hole somewhere in there. Nothing changes. Same shit, different toilet. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on Sunday Night Football. Overtime. Steelers get it done over the Ravens, 16-13. Steelers move to 8-8 on the season, move within a game of making the postseason. They'll need to win next week, coupled with a loss by both the Dolphins and the Patriots, both of which I think can lose next week. So if they can beat the Browns next week, the Steelers will have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. Meanwhile, the Ravens put themselves in a tough spot now. They need help in order to try to win the division. At 10-6, they'll need Cincinnati to lose to Buffalo on Monday night tomorrow, drop to 11-5, and then next week's contest will be for the division, being that the Ravens beat the Cincinnati Bengals earlier this season on Sunday Night Football in Baltimore. So now they need help. Whereas before, all they had to do was win both games, and they would be division champs. Now they need a little bit of help, but they're still going to the playoffs no matter what. And so you got to feel good about that. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your New Year's weekend. And I'll see you guys on tomorrow. We got a big one tomorrow. Bills and Bengals. That should be a fun one. Front row seat for that. We'll chop that up, break it down. That is going to be arguably an AFC championship preview. This is why you gotta love the AFC, because it's big on big, it's best on best, with all these big time quarterbacks. So anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. Take care. Got a super chat here. Spanking Brownie Cheekies. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Writes, feels like I've been listening to Rod Wave for the last month. This team can make you feel like that sometimes. Anyway, I digress. You guys, get out of here. Have a good one. God bless. And as always, good night.